Right. Good morning, grade 8. Welcome to the class. Your job from last week was to fill in the reach map for us on laws in the workplace. Now, remember in our previous session, we all together took down and spoke about two of the acts or laws that are not in our textbook, but which I felt was very important for you to just be aware of in the grade 8 context. And with regards to labor, we spoke about the Occupational Health and Safety Act, where it described what owners of businesses must do to ensure the safety of their employees at work. And then we briefly spoke about the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act. And please believe me if I say that you will even learn about this up to matric. It's in your matric final paper. So if you know about COHIDA already, then you are a little bit set up for success for your matric final business studies paper. And this is where they specify how employees should be compensated if they get injured on the job. There may be a contracted disease, or even in worst case scenario, if somebody dies, how their next of kin will be compensated in that regard. Okay, so those are the two acts and laws that we spoke of that are not currently in your textbook, and that's why I said that's important to take that down. And then I gave you a brace map. I just want to do a new share. It's this one where I asked you to fill in more information on the following acts. So now I want you to check with me. I've got it here and we can go through it, and yours might be slightly different from mine or in a different order. It doesn't really matter as long as you've got the gist of it. All right, the first act that's very important in the business context is the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, in short the BCEA. Now this, guys, if you have a business one day, if you're a business owner one day, it is very important that you are aware of what is stipulated in the BCEA, so that you make sure that you are handling or trotting within the law, so that when you employ people and they work for you, that you do not expect them to do things that are not within the boundaries of the law. And there we look at things like the following. The BCA describes the following. For example, what is the number of hours in a standard week that a normal employee is allowed to work. They also look at things like overtime, working on public holidays. How many hours must somebody work without taking a break? When must somebody take a break while working in your business? Things like sometimes tea breaks if you work a full day. Types of leave that your employees are entitled to. For example, normal annual leave. It will stipulate what is the minimum number of days. And remember, once again, as we've spoken before, that this is the minimum requirements. Obviously, you as the business owner can improve or increase the number of leave days. I think it's currently at 15 calendar days per year. 15 work days per year, not Saturdays and Sundays, but obviously you can increase that number of leave days. Then also things like maternity leave, sick leave, family responsibility leave. All those kind of leave days are described in the BCEA. Now, a new one that came into effect this year is parental leave for dads. Now, we know that moms, when they expect and when they have their babies born, are entitled to maternity leave. But lots of people argued, but what about the dad? Why can't the dads also get paternity leave? Does anybody know how many days a dad is entitled to take for paternity leave at the moment in South Africa? Who knows? Who wants to take a guess? No one. All right. Currently, paternity leave is stipulated at 10 days per year, or for the when your child is born per dad. But interesting enough, it is unpaid leave. So if you want to take that leave as a dad, when your child is born, you will have to claim those days from the unemployment insurance fund. So you are entitled to it, but your employer is not, how can I say, he's not forced to pay you for those days. If you want to take the leave, you can, but it will be unpaid. But for those days that you can't work or that you're on paternity leave, you can claim from the unemployment insurance fund. So that is just something quite interesting that I researched a bit for us. And then it also stipulates, the Act also stipulates things like, if you now the owner of your business and you pay your people obviously their wages or salaries, what are the permitted deductions of people's salaries? For example, you as the employer have to subtract 1% deduction of the person's salary for unemployment insurance fund, which you have to pay over. If somebody falls within tax brackets where they are responsible or eligible to pay tax, then you as the employer have the responsibility to subtract the pay as you earn, the tax, income tax, before you pay over your employee's salary. Then there's also other things. If you perhaps belong to a union and you give permission to your employer, then the employer can subtract that membership fee and have it paid over. If you belong to a medical aid, pension funds and so on, those are permitted deductions that the employer can deduct. But there's also other things that they just can't deduct without consent from the employee. And then also it describes things like notice of termination. What are the grounds to terminate somebody's job in the workplace, how to go about if somebody needs to be retrenched, what happens if somebody is in breach of the rules of the business and has to be dismissed. All those things are stipulated in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. Now, once again, grade 8s, I even tell that to my grade 10s and 11s in business studies. There's so many things that one has to be careful of, especially with these employment acts and laws that we're talking about, that if you are not 100% conversed and into all of these laws one day, I would really suggest that you get a labor lawyer or a labor practitioner who knows these acts and laws, to make sure that when you draw up your contract and if there's disputes, that you have the right information and you follow the right paths and rules with regards to these acts. Otherwise, sometimes, especially employers, can get into big trouble because they are not doing it according to the law. So that's just a real life tip from my side. Then the next one that you look at is the Employment Equity Act. Now, from the information that I found in our textbook, I basically only got 2 bullets. I don't know if anybody else wants to add something there. The Employment Equity Act has been in place for a many number of years, and that was brought about to remove all forms of discrimination in the workplace. So you cannot discriminate against anybody in terms of employing that person with regards to race, gender, political stances, religious stances, and so on. So everybody has to have a fair chance of being employed. Part of the Employment Equity Act is also the affirmative action that has been put in place in order to reduce the inequalities of the past in the apartheid regime. So that is then our Employment Equity Act. Once again, normally it applies more to your medium and large businesses or organizations, but if you're a business owner one day and this act is still in place, please, in whichever form, please make sure that you adhere to that and that you are abiding by those laws and rules. It is important, especially if you look for to do business with the government or any tenders. They will definitely look into your policies with regards to these laws. Then we look at the Labour Relations Act, and this was introduced in our new democratic South Africa in 1995. in its purpose was obviously to promote economic development in our country, and very important, before 1995, and I would say even earlier in the 1980s, lots of people did not have a voice in the workplace. So if I, as the owner, say, listen, this is how you do it, you will work 18 hours a day, and that's just it, and you're working with dangerous equipment, but you must provide your own protective gear, and so on. You know, workers didn't know what to do, where to go, and who to ask for assistance. Now, especially with the Labour Relations Act, it allows for any employee to join a trade union or a labour union. And that is obviously the trade unions and labour unions, which we'll look at a lot more in depth in grade 9, they are there to protect workers' rights and to make sure that workers are also looked after in the workplace environment. And it's rightly so, because they are also driving the business. So the Labour Relations Act stipulates all those points, what is allowed, what is not allowed. It also describes organizational rights from the business's point of view. If I'm a worker or an employee in the business and I have a disagreement with my employer, what can I do about it? Can I go to a council? We'll speak about the CCMA just now at the end. They also specify things like workplace forums, where employees in a workplace can form a group in order to give suggestions to management, to help run the business, to have input into the day-to-day running of the business. They also give, can you believe it, regulations on how strikes should be conducted. Now in South Africa, I always have this joke that normally strike season was around May, June in South Africa. And why so? You know that we spoke about the national budget earlier this year, and normally the countries and the government's national budgets new national budget come into effect on the 1st of March of each year. So we just passed that. And as a result of that, in many cases, with regards to wage or salary increases or working and so on, employees are not happy, and as a result of that, they might then go on strike. So that normally was the strike season, May, June, when they now found out what their new salaries for the year would be, what their new working conditions would be, and then they might be unhappy. But it seems to me, look, not with lockdown at the moment, many people are not allowed to work, so striking is also at a minimum. But in South Africa, in the last couple of years, I mean, if you open the newspaper or you listen to the radio or the TV, some trade unions members are striking for whatever reason. If it's not the municipal workers union, then it's the metal workers union, or somebody from the mines, or whoever, textile workers. So and also for every industry, there is usually a few trade unions who look after the rights of the workers in that specific industry. So if I'm a mine worker, I will belong, for example, to the National Mine Workers Union or the National Metal Workers Union, or whatever. So there's specific trade unions for specific industries in the workplace in our country. So they even tell you what you must do to strike, how to make sure that the strike is legal, permission that you have to get, etc. So that's also quite interesting. And if you're taking business studies further, grade 10 and 11, we look into that as well into more depth. And then we're going to look at the last one. It is the CCMA, the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration. Like I said last week, this is not really an act, but it's important because if things with these acts and laws go wrong in the workplace, people normally end up at the CCMA. So how does this work? I'm an employee. And my employer accuses me that I've stolen something. I haven't, but as a result of that, they let me sign a letter of, they intimidate me, for example. They let me sign a letter of acknowledgement that I've stolen this item. They dismiss me, and I just have to go. So now the employer perhaps doesn't want to hear or listen to my side. I can actually go to the CCMA and open a case and ask them to help me to get my job back. Yes, Sir Letsu?
Ma'am, can the workers that work in private sectors be part of the trade unions as well? Or is
Yes.
it only government workers?
No, no, no. Anybody. That's like one of your constitutional rights as a person. Nay, to if you work, it is your constitutional right to belong to a trade union or a labor union of your choice. So, for in the private sector, so say for example, I work for Discovery Health or Momentum or just a private small business down the road, I have the right to belong to a trade union. And so does everybody who works for the government. So government teachers, government health practitioners, if they in the municipality, everybody has the right to belong to a trade union. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank you.
Okay, great. That's a wonderful question. And then on that matter, we unfortunately see that a lot in South Africa, where people or some people choose not to belong to a trade union, and that is also your right. You do not have to belong to one. So what happens sometimes in a specific let's say in a specific organization, maybe a large one, there are people belonging to, let's for example say 3 different trade unions. They're all in the same industry, but some people decide I'd rather want to join this trade union, then somebody else wants to join this trade union and another one. So now some of or the members of a specific trade union are, for example, unhappy about the salary increases that's presented to them. So they decide they're going to go on strike. Now, what happens, unfortunately, this is just the members of this trade union that will now go on strike. But then they go and they intimidate. And not always, but it does happen. They intimidate the members of the other trade unions who are perhaps not striking and don't want to strike, they just want to work, and then it sometimes becomes quite ugly. Or they intimidate people who do not belong to a trade union, and any trade union, they say, you will not come to work. If you do come to work, we will go and damage your place of work, or we will hurt your family or something like that. Unfortunately, it does happen in our country, and that is obviously against the law, to intimidate somebody to strike or not to strike for that matter. So let's see if you've got another question. Not. Okay, good. Right. So now, like I said, if there's a dispute in the workplace or in the work environment, it is usually an employee who is unhappy with something that happened or how the employer managed a specific situation or handled a specific situation in the workplace. Probably a person who gets dismissed or fired or demoted, or maybe not, somebody doesn't get his or her salary, then they will approach the CCMA and they will present their case. And in most cases, what will happen is, first of all, we need to understand that the CCMA is independent from the government, so that they can make independent decisions, not worrying about government influence. So that's important. And then normally your first step is, if I as a worker or employee approach the CCMA, they will try to mediate the situation. So they will call in my employer, and the employer, and then I can put my case forward, and the employer will put his case forward, and then there will be a discussion, and they will try to get to an amicable agreement or sort the matter out. If it's not sorted out, then it will escalate and will go higher, and sometimes finally, almost like a court, the CCMA will make a decision to say, okay, this is now the final decision. You have to re-employ or reinstate the worker, pay him his salary or wage, or pay him his 3 months notice, or whatever the case might be. But the first step is always to try and see if they can sort this matter out on a friendly basis. So this is what the CCMA does. Do any of you have questions on the CCMA? Once again, this is just like a little taster of what is to come. When we go to grade 10 and 11, we also discuss the CCMA in much more detail. And can you see how nice this subject of ours is, grade 8? These things are things that you are really going to use in the workplace one day if you have your own business. And And you might not even have your own business. You might be part of the human resources department, where you have to maybe work with these acts and laws. And can you see that you already know now much more about it than somebody who hasn't taken EMS or didn't take EMS? So in short, these are then the acts and laws that you need to know. You must be able to give me some information on that. I can perhaps say, for example, which act provides for the establishment of trade unions. Then you must know it's the Labour Relations Act. If I say which organisation helps to resolve disputes between employees and employers, then you must know it's the CCMA. So you can check then your summaries against mine. As I said, if yours is more or less the same, it needn't be this exactly word for word. If you've got the gist of it, then that is perfectly fine. Good. So that is then the fair employment practices and laws in the workplace that we spoke of last week. Tereletsu, you've got a question?
Ma'am, isn't it when they strike and then they're not at work, the employer gets the right to deduct their money for not working for those hours?
Yes, if that is correct. Obviously, if it's a legal strike, then we call it a protected strike, that then the employees are allowed to strike, but it is on the basis of no work, no pay. So unfortunately, and we discussed this in depth in grade 9, unfortunately, many workers do not understand this, where they go for months on a strike, let's say 2 or 3 months, in order to get a better salary. So, for example, the employer offered them 6% salary increase for the year, but they want 10%. That's what the trade union also says, okay, we must push for 10%. Now, obviously, the employer will say, I can't afford it. Then they lodge actually the intention to strike. The trade union will lodge that with the authorities and say, now it's granted. Now these people go on strike. The employees go on strike, let's say for 2 to 3 months. Now, people, they do not get paid any money for the time that they are striking. So let's say after 3 months, finally, the employer and the trade unions come to an agreement that the employer is not going to pay 6%, but 8%. Now, if I do the calculations with my grade 9s, if you take the amount of money that was lost for especially your long strikes, 2-3 months, the little bit more that they were fighting for percentage-wise, let's say from 6% to 8%, will never make up the money that they've lost, the salaries that they've lost for those 2 to 3 months. So we've worked it out, I think with the grade 9s, they actually put themselves like 4 to 5 years back. So they're worse off because of these long strikes. I do recognize and acknowledge that a strong, maybe powerful strike for a few days might have an impact. But prolonged strikes in the workplace, I cannot see any benefit for that. What we need to remember, grade 8s, is also, if you're a member of a trade union, you have to pay membership fees. You normally pay it either per year or per month. Now, those guys, I call them the fat cats, they get from the trade union leaders. They get from your membership money. They get salaries every month. They get huge salaries every month. So while you are striking to get 2% more salary increase from your employer, they still get paid. So I just feel sometimes the employers do not see the big picture. And I'm not always sure if the trade union leaders describe or show them or tell them what the real picture is. So, for example, my friend, this is your salary. If we get 2% more, this is what it's going to be. If we're on strike for 2 to 3 months, this is what you're going to lose in your salary. Let's see if it is really worth the while. And then grade 8, I'm going on now, yeah. We also need to remember that if the workers go on strike, it means that the business that they're working for might not be able to operate at its optimum level. So profits might drop. The business might need to then lay off or retrench people because it can't keep on paying them because the business is not making any money. So at the end, who is losing here? Finally, still the employee. So he or she might lose their job. They might, after this big strike, they might even get a smaller salary as a result of the business not making profit. So there's lots of things that people need to take into account before they just start striking. And from a business perspective, because that's what my job is also, to look from a business point of view, I'm not always sure if the employees have all the information before they decide with the trade union to go on strike. So, Tsereletso, I hope that also answered your question there. Anybody else on anything on fair employment practices or laws in the workplace? Okay, let's go on to the last little bit of factors of production. Let me just now see. Yes.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, I noticed something. Some people are raising their hands. I think it's because they didn't unmute themselves.
Well, are there more people?
Yes, ma'am, they are. Patrick, I'm not sure why.
I'm terribly sorry. You know, Ms. Ma'am is a little bit technological disabled. Nee, Patrick?
Ma'am, tell them to unmute themselves. I think it'll work.
Let me unmute. I unmuted Patrick. Patrick, is there something you wanted to ask?
No, ma'am.
Not. Okay.
But he's raising his hand.
Okay, I think they're just muting because they don't want to affect our class with the background noise, perhaps. But I am checking. I was just wondering, I was just scared that there's maybe more students that I haven't seen. So let's see. But please, guys, you know, if you want to ask a question and I'm not responding, just unmute yourself and start talking. I'm used to that in class, so that's perfectly fine. Okay, I just want to see now, where's my other one, the last one on the part 3 now. I think I've lost it now. Let's quickly see. Factors of production that we just loaded now on the answer. What did I do now with that one? Factors of production, part 2. Where's part 3 now? Sorry, let me just see if I can find it here. It disappeared now. There we go. I don't know where I saved that. All right. Can you see this, guys? Part 3. Tsereletso?
Ma'am?
Can you see this on your screen? Factors of production, part 3.
I see the BCEA. No, ma'am, I can't see it.
Okay. All right. Let me just do a new share and see if this works. Sorry about that, guys. Do you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then this. Let's go on. Remuneration for the factors of production. Do you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
wonderful. Good. So this is the last part that we're looking at today. Now remember, we had capital, we had natural resources, we had labor and entrepreneurship as our 4 factors of production. Now obviously for each of these factors of production, there should be some form of payment in the production process, or the big word that we use is remuneration. Okay, so now this is on page 85 and 86 in your textbook. You can also go through that. I'm just briefly going to explain it, and then you can fill in the bridge map for us as well. Now let's start. I filled in the first one with capital. Now, how the easiest way for me to explain this is as follows. If you have money that you want to save, we normally put it in the bank. Or you can put it in a fixed deposit. We spoke about fixed deposit earlier this year. What do you get from the bank? What does the bank pay you if you leave that money there for a long period of time? It pays you interest. It pays you interest. So your money gets more. They nowadays, I think you can get well between about if you put it on a fixed deposit, probably between about 6 and 7 or 6 and 8% interest per year. If you have a normal savings account, you'll probably get like 1 or 2%, very little. But if you put your money on a fixed deposit for a longer period of time, you get interest on that money. The bank adds a little bit of that, little bit of money onto your initial amount to reward you for leaving your money with them, because obviously we spoke about it, the bank uses your money to lend out to other people who want to take out loans. So the remuneration for capital as the factor of production is interest. And I know there's different types of capital, but the easiest one to remember it with is the money that you would invest in or put in the bank, and on that money you will get interest. Now, if somebody, if you go and you borrow money from somebody, for example, you the business owner, you want to expand your business, you want to take out a loan, the bank is going to charge you interest on that capital or on that money that you've borrowed. So the remuneration for capital, or the reward for capital that you've put into your business, is interest. Right, if we look at the next one, let's say labor. Now, if anybody works for a business or in an organization, do they do that for free? No, they don't. They want to get something for it. Nobody's going to work for free unless you're a very, very good person. But most of us also need to earn a living, and that's why we're working. So what do we get paid if we work? We get paid salaries and wages. So the reward for labor in the factors of production situation is salaries or wages. If we look at the next one, let's take natural resources. Best way for me to explain or describe that one is, if you have, let's say you have a farm and you have a piece of land there, and you're not going to do anything with it. You just want to sit on the stoop, drink a bit of coffee, and look out to this wonderful piece of land. But now your next door neighbor comes and says, listen, I want to use this a piece of land of yours. I want to plant some crops, or I want to put in some cattle or sheep, or whatever the case might be. If you're a very nice person, you can say, yes, you can use it, but obviously they're not going to use it for free, because there is that piece of land has got value for you, and you could do something yourself there. So you would normally rent out your farm, or that piece of the farm or the land. So the remuneration for natural resources is rent, that somebody would pay for that. Okay. And then the last one, entrepreneurship. We spoke about that, and we said none of these things will happen. Nothing will ever be produced, whether it's a product or a service, if we do not somebody who's running with this whole project, who came up with the idea, and who thought of this wonderful new thing to make. We spoke about our choc chip biscuits, and that is the entrepreneur. But once again, entrepreneurs can just as well go and work for an organization and get a salary or a wage. But no, they're taking the risk, they're putting in lots of hours of work, they're thinking of new ways to do things. So in some way or another, the entrepreneur also has to be rewarded or remunerated. And why do we start any business? Why does somebody start a business? It's to make money. The better word to use is to make profit. So the entrepreneur's reward for taking all the risk, combining all the factors of production, is profit. So that is his or her remuneration. Guys, and that is the last part of this unit that we've looked at for the last week and a bit. So what I want you to do is, you can copy this bridge map in your exercise book and fill in the other factors of production with their remuneration, and then you're set to go. You know them. And then just to go see if you can recall, and if you can integrate what we've discussed in the last few sessions, I'd like you to do activity 5 on page 86 in your textbook. The activities in your textbook, you do it in your exercise book, and I've also included an extra activity as an attachment on Google Classroom, activity 3, which you can do, and then I will load the answers tomorrow, and then you can check that for us. Guys, any questions from your side that you still need some help with? All fine? Thank you. It was a nice long session. Thanks for checking in and working with me. I hope that this helped you a little bit, and I'll see you soon again. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.